Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. We're here. We're back at it again, and we're going to get on into it. But before we do, as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. You know, I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. With that being said, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Organic herbs and botanicals, skincare and edibles, wellness for body and mind. The Brothers Apothecary. Fine teas and remedies. Ronald Records. From indie gems to classic hits, discover the heart of local music. With live shows all the time, up close and personal, and regular releases on their in-house label. Ronald Records. Supporting the community, one track at a time. All right, thank you all so much for watching. Again, shout out The Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. With that being said, let's go ahead and get on into it. Here is today's guest.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy DDwili, but you can call me Dill.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. I know we chatted about this earlier, but what you do for this community is so great, and I feel so privileged to be on this show.
Oh, well, thank you, man. That means a lot. I appreciate it. But now let's go ahead and get to know you a little bit. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, what you do, give us that Tinder profile of your involvement with music.
Well, let's see. I'm 33 years old, just turned 33 last month.
Oh, happy late birthday.
Thank you. I also just got married.
Oh, congratulations, part 2.
Thank you. It's easier to say my wife than my fiance.
Oh, very much
Less syllables.
Very much so.
But I'm a funky lullaby rapper. I started making music back on the East Coast when I was in high school. And then shortly before my 30th birthday, I moved out here to Portland to see what was up with the scene. And there's a lot going on with this.
Very much so. Very much so. It's definitely a cool place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess let's kind of backtrack. Let's find out from the early stages what got you into music initially.
Well, I didn't really start doing music at a young age, like I feel like a lot of people were. I just mostly played video games and soccer, essentially.
Okay. Well, video games have pretty fire music going on in them themselves.
I listen to video game soundtracks while I'm at work.
Fair.
I love video game music.
They did figure out that secret ability to have the same thing played over and over and over and somehow never get tiring.
Welcome to the life of a producer.
Ah, yes.
Sampling stuff, you're just listening to the same thing over and over again. But kind of related to video games, though, I guess my music journey started when my brother and I were messing around on Fruity Loops, making little beats on there. We'd sample video game music that we liked. We try, everybody samples Mario or whatever, but I'd try to find something like the underground theme or something that was less known, even though that's
Pokemon battle music. Yeah, I don't know why more people
I'd
don't.
choose one of the towns or something, kind of be that special snowflake of samples, I guess. But I didn't really start rapping until high school with my next door neighbor Ben. We used to freestyle a lot, but I really only started writing because we were making fun of some other kids in high school. We had some friends, Sean and Luke.
Oh, shout out Sean and Luke.
Shout out Sean and Luke. I don't know if they still make music, but they were making music back then, and they were part of a rap group called Unexpected Collision.
Okay.
And Ben and I were little turds, and so we wanted to make fun of them and clown on them for making rap music, so we called ourselves Expected Separation. And
we would have been a great album name for them. It was
pretty clever. It's just literally the opposite of what their group was called.
Yep.
But we would pretend to be them on these raps. We would do a lot of parody stuff. I think the first words I ever wrote was, "Being OG is really hard to cut, especially when your brain is stuck in your butt." And it's just really dumb rhymes.
Bars.
I think I rhymed player and compare, so I already had like a knack for rhyming.
I was gonna say a little Picasso with the pen over here.
But I soon realized that I really actually enjoyed freestyling a lot. My friend Ben, while we were both kind of little jerks in the high school scene, like he had really good hip hop taste. He introduced me to People Under the Stairs. He introduced me to Binary Star, Immortal Technique, and we would always just freestyle over their beats.
Oh yeah,
like
shut up.
Reality Check or whatever. People Under Stairs had like Montego Slay, which is one of my favorite beats from them. And we would just always freestyle, and we really loved it. And we started trying to write some music together, but Ben wasn't really about the performing live aspect as much as I was. Like, I love being in front of people and showing what I created.
Yeah.
So I was trying to look for other people that I could make music with, and I made music with a few people. My friend Jake, my friend Josh, but nothing really clicked around where it's like, let's continue making music. Like, I had a lot of fun and I love those experiences, but I didn't really start like taking music writing seriously until I met my future group member, JB the Canadian. And I met him. My brother used to do open mics all the time at this coffee shop right down the street from our house. And my brother taught himself how to play banjo, guitar, ukulele. He could sing. I can sing better. But I would always go and support them at their shows. And there was one night after one of their shows in which there was a rap battle going on in the parking lot. And this is at like 10:30 at night or something. So there was like a circle forming. And I go and check it out. And this is still around the time where my brother and I are messing around with like video game beat instrumentals and stuff, but we never really like rapped over them. We would just make them. Yeah. And I got into the crowd and I was watching, and there was this kid with glasses going against this bigger guy. And one of the lines that I remember hearing, and pardon my language, was JB said, "If you had $1 for every girl that you weren't fucking, it'd probably be enough for your liposuction." And he was just like freestyling that.
Oh, damn.
Like, whoa. Like, this is some battle bars, I guess. So after the crowd dispersed or something, I went up to JB. I'm like, "Hey man, like, were you freestyling right there?" He's like, "Yeah, man, I love the freestyle." I'm like, "I like the freestyle too. And I like making beats from video games. You want to come check him out?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So like, he had like a Blazer, those cars. And so he let me hook up my phone with like a bunch of our video game beats. And I remember I had something sampling the Forest from Pokemon, but I put some like hip hop drums over it. Yeah. And we started just like freestyling in that parking lot.
Wait, were you guys making some Cinnabars?
We were making some Cinnabars, and they were fire.
That's a deep one for y'all.
I know, that is.
Are you gonna get that right away or not at all?
Yeah, you got to go to a gym or something to figure that out.
Yeah, if you don't know it, you're probably living on an island.
You're missing no thing.
Oh. Nice.
That was a terrible one. But so we realized we enjoyed writing music. We enjoyed video games, and we enjoyed freestyling. So we started writing music, and his younger brother wanted to start rapping too, his younger brother Brandon. So we slowly started like getting together after school, and I would make beats, and we would chill in his parents' basement. They had like a studio set up because his dad did light music. And we called ourselves Henergy Productions. Henergy was a mix between NOS energy drink and Hennessy. And that was a drink. And it was...
yes, that old classic.
Yeah, that classic Henergy. And so it started off with us three primarily, and then we had another friend named Arthur who would sing, and then another woman named Lauren Satwich who would also kind of rap and sing. But then it kind of condensed just to us three, me and the two brothers. DDwili, where I had a space at the time between those names. JB the Canadian, and Iceberg.
Ooh.
And so we would kind of do like a Beastie Boys style thing where, we would all know each other's lyrics. We would all write at the same time, so we'd contribute to each other's bars, and we would always like rhyme off of the other person. So whenever we performed live, we would always have other people backing up when we were running out of breath and stuff. And music growing up on the East Coast, I feel might have been a little bit different than how the scene is now. East Coast is all about that. This is real hip hop, sort of like, it originated in New York.
Yeah.
So like being in New England, we're in New Hampshire specifically. There's a lot of that sort of adhere to the style of performance of MCing that I feel like isn't necessarily a thing out here. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad it isn't, because it was kind of toxic sometimes, man. Like I remember there was one show we went to in which we had like a duo getting on before us, and they started their music up. They had backing vocals on their tracks. The DJ heard it, stopped the music, and kicked those guys off the stage and was just like, next. And then we're like, all right, I guess we're up next.
Yeah, damn.
And even during that show, I remember like the music cut out, but since I made the beat, I just quickly started beatboxing, and the other two just finished the rhymes. Man, that was a privilege. But college came and went. Our group kind of disbanded just because of the distance of everything, and I started making solo music. Let's
go ahead and put a pin in that right there. We'll talk more about like what you're doing with yourself in just a moment. But before we get into a little bit more of that, I do have a couple foundation questions I like to check in with everybody on.
Yeah.
And this first one, it's one we ask early, it's one we ask often, and it's definitely a crowd favorite. What was the first album you ever bought with your own money?
So growing up, I torrented a lot of stuff off of like LimeWire. LimeWire was a treat, but obviously people like those physicals. You like to throw them in the cars. And I think the earliest album that I can remember buying with my own money was Plastic Beach by Gorillaz.
Okay.
I think I loved Gorillaz growing up. Like, I think a lot of listening to Gorillaz is what like inspired me to start singing a lot, because Damon Albarn does those sweet falsettos.
I've got a grip of it over there.
I'll have to check that out after this. Yeah, I remember getting in my mom's car because I was still learning how to drive or whatnot, and her coming with me to Bull Moose Music in Manchester, New Hampshire to pick up Plastic Beach. And then we both just kind of sat in the car and listened to it together.
Nice.
It was really, really nice.
Oh, yeah.
Gorillaz means a lot to me.
Yeah. Demon Days is still, it's one of the few albums that I don't think I go a month without listening to.
I think Demon Days, the song, is my favorite song of all time.
You know, El Mañana. Songs of all time.
El Mañana. I really like the Metrimony remix on, what was the name of the remix album? I like the remix of it.
Fair, yeah. But getting back to it, for this next one, what was the first live show you ever went to that was like specifically one you wanted to go to? So like you saw it was happening, got tickets, and went to it.
Yeah. I honestly didn't go to a lot of live shows when I was a kid, but and I wanted to. Usually I have it in my wallet all the time, but the first show that I ever went to was Radiohead after In Rainbows came out.
Okay.
Like back when MySpace was a thing. And I think that was like the only way you could download it at the time.
Back in MySpace.
Back in MySpace days, you would have been in my top 8.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
But my best friend, Michael, bought me tickets to go see it.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because we both really liked Radiohead a lot, and I had really never been to a big concert like that. I think it was the Comcast Center in Connecticut. Not entirely sure, but I just remember they had giant glowing tubes that like just reflected upon the music, and they went through like their whole discographies and stuff. But I think they performed the entirety of In Rainbows at one point, and it was really nice. I loved, I think Weird Fishes was like one of my favorite.
Oh yeah, man, I bet that was a wild experience.
Yeah, insane. As like a little kid, because that wasn't even the time where I was like smoking weed yet too. And I remember it was like, I had never been to a concert, and I remember seeing puffs of smoke. I'm be like, what is that? Huh?
Weird.
That's
not allowed in here.
A skunk in here?
Oh God, to be a child.
Yeah, to be a child.
Oh yeah, but no, that's a pretty powerful experience, for sure.
Yeah, and it definitely made me want to go check out more live shows after that. So
yeah,
mostly like hip hop, because that's what I love the most.
Hell yeah. All right, well now let's go ahead and let's get into you in more of the present day.
Yeah.
But before we officially do, get an easy one out of the way now. How'd you pick the name?
I didn't pick the name. It was JB who did, and it was during a freestyle too. Like originally I was just going by Dill. I also went by Destroyed at one point too.
Okay.
Okay. But, it was silly. That was during my I love Ludacris phase. But DDwili came from him just going like DDwili, and like somehow it just stuck. So freestyling has brought a lot into my life, and it brought me the passion to start making music, and it brought me my name.
Hell yeah. Hey, I love that.
Although a lot of people have a hard time pronouncing it at first. They see like the two D's together and they're like, DDwili? Double DDwili? It's DDwili.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something in there you could do for like fun concept bits and album names later. But
oh, yeah.
Chop that off.
Yeah.
But now let's go ahead and let's talk about your writing process a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're going to break it up into chunks, but we're going to start right at the beginning. So when you get inspired, you're ready to make music. What are some of the things you do to get a track started?
True. The thing that always inspires me to make music at first is just listening to new production and seeing what it brings me.
Do you get beats online? Do you have people who are sending you them all the time? How do you go about procuring those new experiences?
Both. Like on the East Coast, a lot of times I used to make my own beats, or I'd go to other local producers and such. And then like I honestly didn't really think about using YouTube beats or something because there was like a stigma on the East Coast of like, well, everybody else will use them.
It didn't really become a big thing until like the last, like, I want to say realistically, like the last like 7-ish years.
But to be honest, instead of thinking of, everybody uses this, come in with the mindset of being like, I'm going to be one that owns this track.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the one that brings the most creativity and inspiration out of this. So that way, whenever other people's tracks come, they're like, I'd prefer to listen to him. I don't know. I have that kind of confidence about me. But yeah, when I came out here, I know that production was a big thing. So I reached out to a bunch of different producers, but there are some like YouTube producers that I've actually like communicated with on like Facebook or whatever, just to kind of like be like, hey, I made this song to your stuff. I appreciate your music. And so like the first thing I do is just like go through like a random producer's catalog or something. And one thing that I feel like I always tell people, but I like going on walks at nighttime, like 11:30 night.
When the world is quiet.
Yeah, where the world is quiet and like it's just me, headphones, a phone connected to them, and just listening to beats. And I entered this kind of state that I call music video vision, where like I try to imagine what it would be like if I was rapping or singing to this while I was moving on camera. And so usually I come up with like the cadence or flow of things first, like ha da da ha da 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 da. What about all of these things that I'm talking about? I don't know. And I always come up with like the melody or cadence first. I tend to treat my writing process kind of like a thesis paper, where usually like the hook is kind of like, you know, the thesis, the thing that you're kind of constantly arguing for. And then each of the body paragraphs, the verses, are the things that sort of complement the thesis statement. So, yeah, I just love writing. Sometimes I'll write like the third verse first and then the hook and then write like first and second.
Yeah.
I always try to make sure it's kind of a linear path with each song. Because I also write with the mindset that I'm going to perform it live. So I want to be able to perform everything from front to back and not have to worry about my breath control.
Yeah.
I also hope that each verse kind of like feels like it's a progression from the last one.
Oh yeah. No, I dig that.
Yeah.
And I guess, do you do pen to paper? Or are you mostly freestyle? Like, how do you go about getting the words into existence?
Well, I feel like making a song is kind of freestyling because you're just coming up with it.
Yeah.
Usually it's just whatever comes to mind that is the catchiest. I try to go for the hook first because that usually segments in my mind like, okay, this is what I'm going to be writing about. And I'll often just like freestyle words or whatever. If there's like a word that's stuck in my mind, how can I implement this into the hook to make it feel like a vibe?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like playing video games a little bit where, you know, if you want an ice level, you got to listen to icy kind of bell music or whatever. If you want a desert level, you listen to sitars. I kind of think of that way when I'm looking for production too. Like if I'm feeling kind of moody or something, I want like something slow and melodic.
Yeah.
If I want something upbeat, I want to try to find something that like allows me to really be energetic and move around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then once you get a track finished writing, so it doesn't have to be like released and put out and all that. But once it's gotten to the point where you can start memorizing it, how long does it usually take you to feel comfortable enough to perform it?
I've performed tracks the next day after writing them.
Okay.
Usually when I'm writing them, like, I forgot to answer this earlier, but I usually write my stuff on a phone notepad.
The modern day pen and paper.
When I first started writing, I still have my old notebooks of everything that I wrote, but like a little bit of, I think, arthritis in my hand makes that kind of stuff. So it's easier to tap on the phone. What was the question again?
How long does it take you to feel comfortable performing it?
Yeah, I memorize as I'm writing.
Okay.
So oftentimes, like, I won't continue on to the second verse or third verse until I feel like I have the flow and the breath control of a single verse leading into the hook. Mm-hmm. And often, even if I'm writing like a third verse or something, I'll repeat the entire song up until that point in my mind, or like while I'm walking around. So that way I feel like when I'm performing it, it will flow correctly. Like at the point of like, how out of breath am I? Can I do this while I'm still doing this? Like, can I go fast here or whatnot? But performing, like, I don't feel nervous performing at all. Like, and I freestyle well enough where, like, if I were to mess up, I can cover it pretty quickly by just freestyling until I can get to the point where I remember other things.
Okay.
For the thesis, actually, that I performed on, I performed the song that I wrote literally 2 days before, and I did it perfectly, and then I messed up on a song that I've been performing for like years.
Oh, damn.
So
the duality of man.
The duality of man.
Yeah. Well, now let's go ahead and let's talk about some of your music.
Yeah.
So I jumped on ye old Spotify, and you've got a grip of music. It goes back to like 2017, and I'm sure this description will come as no surprise since it's the name of your first single and album, but it's so funky. It's so groovy. And like, even when you're doing more chill and mysterious stuff, it just had this bounce to it. And like, even in your most recent EP, Goldeneye with, is it Tia Amari?
Yeah,
nice.
Tia Amari. Vancouver.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. It's very jazzy. It's very swanky. Goldeneye in particular was a vibe. And I love how you two were super locked in for the hook. I am curious to know, how many times did that take until you guys got it like flawlessly?
I mean, as I write, I memorize.
Yeah.
So I remember I had her over because we would meet up at A Revolution Cypher Saturdays.
Oh, shout out A Revolution.
And I love freestyling there. You should check it out. It's always a Saturday once a month. And I met Tia there, and Tia has this battle rap energy sometimes where she encourages people to like kind of go against her. But whenever she and I would get on the mic together, we would sing together. It just like naturally happened. We never like asked to do it. We would just do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Oh, yeah.
But I just figured like I had some songs in mind that I never got to get done, and I always wanted to work with another female vocalist. And so I invited Tia over, and I did like, hold on to a little thing I want to try, hoping that the feelings will multiply. And she's like, yeah, I can do that. And so we kind of wrote our verses separately a little bit, but when we went to the studio, shout out Purple Matter, at first, we tried doing some takes where we were both in the booth at the same time. But, I think we're both so reflective, and like we can critique each other without feeling like hurt.
Yeah.
So like there are ideas where I'm just like, why don't with your voice you go a little bit higher and I do the low here, and then like I will do the reverse somewhere else and such. And so it's incredibly easy working with Tia.
Gotcha. Okay. Hell yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
But get back into it. I think the thing that stood out to me most when I was listening to your music, because I did check out a pretty good chunk of it. But it's how refined your delivery is. I've listened to many people's music now, and that's something I always take a look at, and especially it's even down to, and you already touched on this, so I'm glad you said it first because it's already in my notes. So this isn't something I came up with while you're talking. Where your breaths are, it's very obvious that you pay attention to where you put them so that you can do them later. And I said this in a recent episode, that's kind of a good example of somebody who is a little more tenured in their approach. So that was something that I thought stood out and was very apparent as far as like, obviously you put the work in.
Yeah,
so like I said, I'm glad you touched on that.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of touched upon it earlier too, but it was also just the environment I grew up in.
Yeah.
They really emphasized emceeing and performing. So if you couldn't perform your stuff, you couldn't perform.
Exactly.
And I'm also thankful that I worked with people that had similar minded, JB and Brandon, who wanted to kind of do that emceeing aspect and encouraged each other, like challenge yourself with writing something that you feel like other people can't do.
Yeah.
So
But now I do this bit where I pick out a track that I enjoyed.
I can't wait.
You know, it was a lot of fun actually, but I decided to go with Yada Yada.
Okay.
Yeah, featuring Jamie Fortune. Shout out Jamie.
Yeah.
And now I've already mentioned this before, but I think your delivery is great. So we don't really need to touch on that for that track. Y'all both crushed it. And I rarely pick a track that has like a feature on it because I usually like to just like emphasize the person. But I mean, y'all were great on it. And your whole catalog is just you doing quality approaches. But the reason I picked it, this is such a personal to me thing, that beat just felt so Anomile. And I had to listen to it over and over again because it had this really musical but down to earth feel that you two just own the entire time.
I think when I found the beat, I think it was through a YouTube producer, and I heard it, and like I had not worked with Jamie previously, but I had hosted shows in which he's performed at, and oh yeah, I host shows, but and I had seen him perform live, and I was always so impressed with his delivery as well, because it was just so clear. It reminded me a lot of myself, because he kind of writes in a linear fashion where there's a clear beginning and end of a verse and not just like chopped up bars in between. And when I brought it up to him, I started writing a verse while I was at work, and I showed it to him, and he was excited to work with me too. And I was surprised, but after work one day, he's like, yo, check out this hook I wrote. And I'm like, okay. And so he's like, you should sing that. And I'm like, all right.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of had like this, we had this sort of thing where in reality, I wanted him to sing it or whatnot. Like, I think I added some like backing vocals or whatnot. I can't remember the exact process, but it was one of those, it's another person who it's really easy for us to critique each other and kind of like, because I feel it's best when you work with people where they want to know where they can improve. And I think Jamie and I kind of had the same mindset of wanting to just create the best track that we possibly can. Like, I remember coming up with him to lyrics and be like, does this make sense? And he'd be like, yeah, DDwili, you're fine.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then we recorded that at Page Street Sound Lab.
Oh, hell yeah.
The Frankie.
Oh, yeah.
And that process was just incredible. Like, we were able to bang that out in like 2 hours or so.
Oh, rad.
And
well, it's definitely a super cool track.
Thank you. That was a great pick.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was tough. It was tough. You've got some pretty quality music.
Thank you.
But I am curious to know now, what are some of your favorite tracks to perform?
Yeah, I have this track, New Game Plus, that I like to perform just because I can do it. There's a lot of like long periods of time in which I don't take a breath, but I've practiced enough, and it's crazy with the amount that I like used to vape and smoke cigarettes that I can still kind of do that. I like doing songs where I kind of sing. I have a song called Afterglow, which is one of my favorite songs to perform last, where I'm kind of like chilling out and I kind of just do smooth melodic stuff. And then, I love performing the funk. Like funk, I feel like my wife is always like, you always have to perform the funk.
I mean, it's definitely, just because it's part of your brand, but also it's for being one of your earliest pieces of work. It's a really cool track, man.
Yeah, I think honestly that EP is my most solid out of everything that I've done.
I think you had a handful of points in time where you went a few different directions, but that's appreciated.
Yeah.
Like when I listen to somebody's catalog and 95% of their songs sound identical, it's tough to get behind regardless of how talented they are. So like trying things, I think, is an important part of the process regardless.
I think it's incredibly important for artists to try new things.
Always.
It's kind of like with actors. I think rappers can get typecasted in the certain vibes.
Very much so.
And I think as an artist, it's kind of like your duty to try to evolve with your creation. And whether or not it's a direction that other people like, I guess that's up to your own interpretation. But I always feel like with every project that I do, there needs to be something that I try different or something that I try new to improve my own self. Like with the funk, I was like, I need to be more loud, energetic, upbeat.
Yeah.
And then with like the Golden Eye, I was like, I want to be jazzy.
Yeah. And again, it just two different like elements, but still very much you know what I mean? So it's not like I heard this, I was like, this doesn't even remind me remotely. Like, it just kind of expands your palette and just shows what you're more capable of. Yeah.
I do think it's kind of a double-edged sword because if you play my music on shuffle, it might be a little bit crazy.
I'm one of those people that like if I like put on just like the playlist of everything I enjoy, like if you go to my liked songs and you just hit shuffle, it's chaotic.
Yeah,
like it can go from like jazz to like deathcore to like bop for some reason, just gonna show up right then and there, and then for some reason bop again but slightly slower. Like it can be kind of madness. So I am all right with that, but I get what you're saying. But now let's go ahead and we're gonna take a moment and we're gonna shift gears a little bit, because you have a little something else that you are in charge of and tend to handle, known as Bars Over Bars.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah.
To be honest, I completely forgot about that at the beginning.
That's all right.
But yeah, Bars Over Bars didn't start with me. It started with this man. He goes by Hero the MC on the East Coast. And I... don't quote me on this, but he started throwing shows in the New England area circa maybe like 2019, 2020. And the workload that he was doing where there was some periods of time where he was showing me the schedule where he was doing like 20 shows a month.
Yeah.
Insane.
I know what that's like.
Yeah. And that's why I appreciate people like you, but definitely take a break sometimes.
Yeah.
But he started this movement, and after Energy, I was trying to look for other collectives to kind of join, and I joined one, but I wasn't really meshing with like their goals or whatnot. It didn't feel true to me personally, but I saw that what Hero was doing with Bars Over Bars was amazing, because the amount of people that they were giving a platform to perform, and performing is one of my favorite things in the world.
Same.
And I do believe that anybody should be given the opportunity to perform. They shouldn't have to pay to perform. Yeah. That's a big thing that he is like a big no on, is that everybody performs for free, and if we make enough money with ticket sales, you get a cut of the pie.
Yeah.
And I really resonated with that. And he has a little live stream podcast that he does where he listens to music submissions and stuff. And I started tuning into it. And then he liked me because I performed on one of his showcases, and I was out here, and we started becoming chummy. And he asked me, hey, would you like to try to do Bars Over Bars over in Portland, so that way we can kind of have a reach? Because he was slowly building. He started in Massachusetts, and then he started getting some leadership where he could trust people to throw shows up in Maine, Vermont, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. And so he wanted to expand the reach a little bit. And I'm like, I could probably do that here. I'm personable enough. And so I started throwing shows out here in like 2020, at the end of 2021, and the entirety of 2022. Just my ideas were, nobody pays to perform. I try to actively seek artists that I feel like don't often get opportunities to perform and stuff. Because like, I mean, I know that sometimes Verbs and Max Smith of The Thesis kind of talk about this too, but like a lot of hip hop, especially on the East Coast, is kind of dominated by like a bunch of white dudes.
Yeah.
You know? And so trying to create these opportunities where it isn't just a show full of white dudes and stuff. Like, I want to hear what the women of the city can perform. I want to hear people from different backgrounds from me, so that way I can like learn about them through their performances. And so no pay, people who don't often get opportunities to perform. And also just creating a welcoming environment too.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to stay away from the hostility of like what I experienced growing up on the East Coast. I wanted to make it so like everybody feels welcome, everybody feels loved. That's one of my favorite things about hosting is I like to kind of come up with tidbits, like kind of, because I feel like a lot of shows, they're just like, all right, up next, Jimmy, give it up for Jimmy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would be like, yo, man, this man is such a hard worker. Over 500 episodes he's created of this podcast. He's a music aficionado. He reaches out to you. You don't reach out to him. He reaches out to you to make sure that your voice is heard. Let's give it up for Jimmy. Like, you know, just stuff to kind of amp and pump people up other than just saying their names. Like, I love listening to new music. I love talking about like what my favorite songs are. I kind of like sometimes be like, I hope that you're performing this live or whatnot. But yeah, I was doing about like 2 to 4 shows a month in 2022, mostly in Portland at the Big Legrowski, now Abide.
Yeah.
And then I did a show up in Seattle, which was really, really cool as well. It was the first time ever going up there. And I really enjoyed that, but I needed to take a break because I work a warehouse job in which I work 12.5-hour shifts.
That'll do it.
And there are some times in which the scheduling would happen where I'd work a 12.5-hour shift, host a show until 11, but be there until like 1, and then get up at 5 and work another shift. And I needed to take a break from that. It was very mentally straining, but I am looking forward to starting Bars Over Bars back up again, both with freestyle events similar to Cypher Saturdays and also curated showcases so that way we can get more people out here to perform.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for taking a moment to share that with us.
Thank you for giving me the moment.
But now we're going to move back to some more of your experience with music questions. And for this next one, let's look at music that you're working on that isn't out yet. Let's talk about some new stuff. What can we look forward to with some new music that you got going?
I have a lot of collaborations in the works. Some of them have been recorded over a year ago.
Okay.
And have quite a few things on the backlog. I feel like because I started out kind of collaborating with people with making music, that's like where I excel in. Like, I feel like I can always bring my best work when I'm collaborating with people. So almost a year ago to the date, I collaborated with Julian Outlaw.
Oh, shout out Julian.
We were sampling like Parappa the Rapper and stuff and just making like really fun stuff in my kitchen. Recently, I worked on some music with Twan.
Oh, shout out Twan.
Twan, easily one of the greatest creatives in the city of Portland.
Big fan.
So crazy. Tia, I have some music kind of teed up with her. Just kind of, there's a few just factors getting in the way. So once we resolve those, we can kind of like go forward releasing that. And then most recently, I reached out to Off Dot brand.
Oh, hell yeah.
And
hell yeah, shout out Off brand.
I love their energy. It was so funny. Twan, I asked Twan if I could host a show for his CD release. And so we put it on, and he had a band performing the whole album there. And I was chatting with somebody who was watching my dogs, who is also a great musician in this city, Moody Pax.
Oh, shout out Moody Pax.
Shout out Moody Pax. Thank you so much for watching my dog while I was getting married. You're the best. I was chatting with him, and he's like, yo, man, like, Dill, you would sound good with a band. You should reach out to Off Dot. I'm like, I don't think I've heard about them. And he's like, dude, they were literally on the show that you hosted.
You know exactly who they are.
And so I felt like a big dum-dum, and I reached out to them, and they were pretty excited to work with me. And I went with my wife to their studio, and we made a song on the spot, and then working on a few other things with some instrumentals that they sent me. I'm always seeking collaboration. Like, I love working with people.
All right, I'll jump on a track.
Thank you, Jimmy. That's what I was kind of hoping. But I just seek enjoyment with working with others because I love to create by myself, but it's kind of like that shared experience.
Way more fun to do with other people.
Way more fun to be like, yo, I made this, but with you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Nobody else could have made this except for us. And I love sharing that feeling with people, which is why I really appreciate that you brought up Yada Yada earlier, because it made me just realize like how much I appreciate Jamie Fortune and the opportunity he gave me to work with him to make that dope track.
Hell yeah. No, I love that. Well, thank you for sharing all that. Now let's go ahead and let's take a step back. Let's zoom out and look at kind of music as a whole. And for this one, kind of approach it either as new music that's like just coming out now, or at the very least, music that's new to you that you've experienced recently. But what are some of the things about newer music that you enjoy and you're finding inspiration from?
Newer music. The thing is that my wife and I share similar music tastes, so we're always playing Chromeo, always playing Jamiroquai.
Chromeo is
loves whenever you mention Jamiroquai on the show.
Well, also Chromeo is one of my all-time. Like I've seen them live, I think 3 times now. I'm sad I'm probably not going to get to see them in Bend.
Yeah,
but that's neither here nor there. Definitely that's the reason why I started doing Talkbox.
Yeah.
But back to you.
And we love like West Coast and like just smooth hip hop styles like Black Alicious, Hieroglyphics, Charlie Tuna.
I love Charlie Tuna.
Yeah.
That's somebody I don't hear anybody mention. Have you heard his album with Crafty Cuts?
I haven't yet.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm putting it here. Not going any further, but listen to it. It's incredible.
Listen to Crafty Cuts by Charlie Tuna.
No, the album with Charlie Tuna.
Yes.
There it is. I forget the name of the album. I'm the worst with album names, but check out that album. You will love it.
I will. But I find that a lot of my influences usually stem from those. With newer music, I always just stay tuned into the local scene. Like I feel like I could probably do a little bit better with more mainstream music and tuning in. But I have kind of like my niches that I like to listen to.
Yeah.
And the thing that I try to stay the most current on is the local music. And I pay attention to the R&B around here. I pay attention to the hip hop. I try to listen to any producer tapes that get put out because I love hearing people's new ideas and such. I want to make my own music be more of a product of my environment instead of me creating an environment.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I feel like I tend to create worlds in my music instead of reflecting on the one that I'm in. And that is a mindset that I'm trying to go for with writing new music. And so definitely anything within the city or the Pacific Northwest, or even some of my friends from back east that are doing really great things, I try to stay tuned into what their vibes are and see if there's anything around there that influences me. Because that's how I get to my collaboration is I hear new voices, experience new things, and I'm like, I want to be a part of that.
Hell yeah. No, I love that. All right. And then with that being said, we've got one last question to go in this middle portion, but this is probably the densest question in the interview. We've talked a lot about your experiences with music, the actions, the reactions, but when it's just you and music one-on-one, what does music give back to you?
So it's not on Spotify, but on my Bandcamp, my first like solo project that I worked on was this one called Brother, in which I sampled a lot of video game music because that was very nostalgic to me, and it was always a safe space for me to kind of speak in. And the way that I look at music is that it's kind of like just a space for me to kind of be open and express those feelings that I have a hard time doing in person. Like sometimes I feel like I can be perceived as kind of like a low energy, really chill guy. But like, I feel like everybody deals with stuff, and sometimes it's really hard for me to show like anger or sadness or surprise or shock or something in person. And I feel like music is one of those things where, especially performing, I think that's why I like performing so much too, is that it gives me a pedestal to kind of express my writing voice. Because I feel like sometimes my writing voice is a lot stronger than my speaking voice. Which is also another reason why I like performing, because it allows me to channel this thing that I find that I'm really good at and do that. So back to the brother thing, I kind of talk about how music is sort of like a brother to me, in which like it's somebody that you can confide in who understands where you came from and still respects and acknowledges you and loves you regardless of it. So I feel like putting into music, it puts back into me, like I love music. And it feels weird saying like music loves me or something, but like it truly is a blessing to be able to enter these kind of flow states where you find a beat that really resonates with you, and that you can like write something and you start to feel emotional during it. And you're like, man, I didn't realize that this could just bring so much out of me. You know?
Yeah.
Like I listen back to some of my stuff that I wrote back in like the Energy days. I'm like, I have no clue how I came up with that. And it was only because the music was there to bring it out of me.
Yeah. Well, and possibly the Hennergy.
Yeah, possibly the Hennessy and Nas too. So.
Yeah, the line's a little blurred there.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, no, that's a phenomenal answer. Thank you so much for sharing.
That made me think a lot.
Well, I'm glad. But now we're going to make you think a little bit more, and we're going to jump on into some hypothetical questions. And for these, sky's the limits. The questions are all made up, so the answers are allowed to be as well. But this first one's pretty straightforward. If you could work with any one person, the only requirement is they have to be alive. Who would you want to work with, and how would you want to work with them?
This is the easiest question in the world. Del the Funky Homo Sapien.
Oh, hell yeah.
My flow is so inspired by him. I would love to work with Del the Funky Homo Sapien.
Have to make a collaborative album called Del and Dill.
Del and Dill. I love that. I would change my rap name to Dill if that.
No, you could keep it the way that, but like that's like a weird like homage to the before.
Like, if Del was like, you have to change your name, I'd be like, yes.
Oh well, of
yes,
course.
Del.
Obviously.
Yeah. I had been listening to Del. Like he was one of the first hip hop artists. Like I really resonated with, because he started rapping kind of his funky outlandish style in a time in which it was kind of like, this is real hip hop. You got to be serious about it.
Yeah.
And his inflections, his cadence, just everything about him always inspires me. And I guess in combination of that, if I could get Gorillaz, if I could get Damon Albarn to have like, something for me in which I can do my thing on that, I would love that as well. So yeah, Del the
Damon, you heard it,
and Damon Albarn with Gorillaz.
Hell yeah. And then subsequently, who's a local artist that you're aware of that you haven't gotten to connect with yet, but you would like to?
This is tough because I've connected with a lot of people. I know Arev mentioned this on her interview that she needs to collaborate with me. I need to collaborate with her.
Yeah.
Like we've hosted events together, we've freestyled together, but I think we're both just so particular about what kind of track we both want to be on. And I think we both have that energy of what we want to do.
Yeah.
It's just finding the right beat for it and just getting into that zone. So definitely Arev. Vina, baby, I need to get your lovely voice on something. She also is a really dope producer out in Portland as well. Dope singer. Like anytime she performs, I go into a trance, and I want to be able to help put people in a trance with her on a stage.
Oh yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, you know what to do. At them in the comments. Let's make it happen. And then for this next one, like I said before, sky's the limits, and it's pretty literal in this sense. But if you could perform anywhere in the world, and you wouldn't have to worry about crowd access or building stability or power, it was guaranteed the best lineup, guaranteed the best show, and it doesn't have to be a venue. It can be anywhere. Where would you want to perform?
See, I feel like a lot of people aspire to do like these big stadium shows or whatever. I just want to perform in different places, like around the globe. Like I think performing in like Brazil would be kind of cool. I would love to go to Europe, just anywhere in Europe and perform. Like go down to Ireland, I'd like, even if it was like in the Netherlands, like just performing different places to see how people would react to me.
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like a lot of people look at me and they don't really expect what's going to come out of my mouth.
Fair.
So I think trying like, just go to a place where culture shock will shock me, and then I'll have to adjust and then be like, all right, here's what I do. I don't have a specific venue in mind. I would just like to perform somewhere that is completely different from where I live.
Hell yeah. No, I love that.
Just to see like how, and also like, I know it's not part of the question, but I would love to go to visit other countries just to see what the local music scene is. I think that would be like one of my number one things I would do if I visited a place, was I want to find just a local show, like nobody famous, just who are the locals who make music here, and see if I could join them on stage.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. That's rad.
Yeah.
All right. And then to wrap up the hypothetical questions, if you could get one more album from anybody, they could be alive, they could be dead, they could have not put out an album in 100 years, they could have put out an album yesterday. Who would you want an album from?
So, I tune into the show a lot. Julian Outlaw stole my answer. He said Big L.
That's actually been the answer a few times.
Really?
I'm gonna say that's not the most uncommon answer nowadays. Yeah. Which I mean, I appreciate it. I'm a big fan as well.
So, yeah, Dead, I would say Big L. I feel like that dude had everything: freestyling, storytelling, punchlines, flow, voice.
Well, I always just think about how would he have affected the culture now? You know what I mean? Like
Dissing people.
Or I mean, like just, because he would have grown up a lot. Like he would have gotten older. You look at like KRS-One now and like just like he would have reached that age where he had to become kind of one of the pillars of people. If he was still around today, he would have maybe not matured. He would have still done his thing, but he would have become a voice for the music as a whole.
I think in high school, Lil Wayne was like the biggest influence for a lot of people because he kind of like reintroduced like punchlines being a thing. I think if Big L was still alive, his style would probably influence just as many people.
Very much so.
Alive, I would like another Gorillaz album where they had Dan the Automator or Danger Mouse produce.
Ooh.
Like,
okay.
Not just another Gorillaz album, but some like another album which they had another hip hop or like just alternative producer come in and do things. Because reason I fell in love with the Gorillaz is that they kind of did like, it was kind of like tribal music almost, if you think about it. Lots of chanting, lots of atmospheric falsettoing and stuff, and I love that kind of thing. And then I feel like Gorillaz has kind of like gone a little bit more poppy and such. And I don't know, when I think of Gorillaz, I think of like just a bunch of people kind of like, I don't know. It's like a group of people. It's always been a collaboration. Yeah. But it's always been people in unison kind of like doing this like chanting kind of like rhythmic. It helped make hip hop more mainstream, in my opinion, just kind of implementing hip hop into these weird alternative singing things. Like the guy from Blur is doing things on this.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love Dan the Automator, like he did Deltron 3030 and stuff. So I would love to see another album in which Damon Albarn stopped making stuff on his iPad.
Fair.
Back to Dan the Automator or Danger Mouse.
Yeah. I will say this though, Song Machines was incredible.
That's true.
Yeah,
that was a good return to.
That was such a beautiful thing to have happen during the time when it came out.
I liked Aries. I think Aries was my favorite of a lot of those songs.
See, I just can't believe he got Elton John and Black on a track together. That
to me,
like were they in a room together? Probably not. But were they on a track together?
I like to make a joke that I feel like Come Humans, which was one of the biggest disappointments of my life. I'm not gonna lie. It was like asking for a peanut butter and fluff sandwich and getting a mustard one instead. I felt like there was like a period of time, and I'm just having fun and joking here, but it felt like he was just kind of taking a hat with names and being like, all right, these are the two people on the track.
Yeah.
But the Song Machines were definitely a step in the right direction, and I really enjoyed a lot of those songs on there. Desolé, Aries, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, we'll get into that later.
I could spend the whole time talking about Gorillaz.
We are going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. What can we look forward to between, let's say, now and March?
Now in March, hopefully some of those collaborations will get underway to completion. A lot of it's recorded and mixed, just kind of needs to be mastered, and some art things need to be done in order to like help present it in a better way than just like throwing a song up. My wife has been nagging on me to start up bars because she really wants me to get back into hosting and giving other people platforms to perform. So I'm hoping with the people at Beer Brats and Beats who have been really nice to let me host a couple shows this year already there. I'm hoping that I can continue to collaborate and work there, and also find some other venues in Portland in which I can host some more shows too. But hopefully not like during the weekends in which I work 12.5-hour shifts. So that, and then I'm trying really hard to work on some more solo stuff because it's so easy for me to collaborate with people.
Yeah.
And I've written quite a bit of music. A lot of it is just finding the finances to record it in a way that I think is appropriate for you guys to listen to.
Fair. Hell yeah. Well, definitely looking forward to all of that. For this next one, go and look straight at the camera. Tell everybody how they can find you.
You can find me on Minecraft, PlayStation. You can find me on all social medias at DDwili, DDwili, Twitter, X, Instagram, PlayStation. Literally, I lucked out with that name. So find me there, DDwili.
Hell yeah. And then any other plugs, any other shout outs, anybody else you'd like to put on while you're on here?
I want to shout out everybody that I've met here out in Portland. On the East Coast, I grew up with like a lot of really great people who helped inspire me to perform music. But out here in Portland, I've met some of the most creative and most welcoming people. Anybody at the Big Legrowski, who has allowed me to do bar shows there, thank you so much. Shout out to Beer Brats and Beats for letting me host shows there. Shout out to everybody that I've collaborated with and mentioned earlier. It's nice to know that I have a place in your music as well, and it makes me feel very welcome because I am a guest in this hip-hop game, and you guys make me feel so welcome. And shout out to my wife, who is one of the biggest supporters of me, my music, and my music endeavors. I love you so much, Raina.
Hell yeah. All right, with that being said, we've got one last question to go. But before we do, I'm going to steal the camera for just a second. As always, y'all, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. You know, I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And one more shout out to the Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, the final question. And this is entirely up to your interpretation. But what is an album you feel is more on the obscure side? It's a deep cut. It's one not a lot of people would know. But it's one you think everybody should know.
May I give 2 answers?
I'll allow it.
Okay. With just a random album, one of my favorite albums of all time that I discovered on an airplane ride to California for the first time is Spectrum by Shook.
Oh, yeah.
You know Shook?
Oh, yeah.
I love Shook, and I was able to speak to him on Instagram a little bit after I discovered him too. Talked about video games and stuff, but Spectrum is just a lot of synthy funk, and you know DDwili loves that funk, but it's also atmospheric. It's like one of the first vinyls that I tried to seek actively after I discovered him. Jasper is an incredibly talented person, and you should check out any of Shook's discography. If I had to go with a local song or local artist from the East Coast, you know I've gassed up the West Coast a little bit, but from the East Coast, I was not always the funky man. There's a guy named Mike Wing on the East Coast from Nashua, New Hampshire, and a lot of his funky attitudes and approaches to music really encouraged me to kind of be funky as well. And I think, honestly, the best hip-hop local album in New Hampshire is Mike Wing's Chips and Salsa, and that you can find that on all streaming platforms. So please, check out my boy Mike Wing, and try to encourage him to make music again, because he was a big inspiration to me, and I want him to make more music. Chips and Salsa.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you for those recs. And everybody, at him in the comments as well. Let's see if we can get him back. All right, but with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Hell yeah. And this has been another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. I'm Jimmy.
I'm DDwili.
And we're signing off. Later, y'all.
That's a wrap. This is not a podcast. This is a show. Keep jamming.